Thanks for watching and welcome to the C-Files. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, share this video, subscribe, hit that bell. Get these little talks, get these updates. Watch them in a time when you're not taking time away from family, not taking a time away from your studies, not taking time away from more important issues in life. This is what you do on your spare time. Watch videos like this. Spend time on social media, YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, whatever medium you look at, TikTok, whatever it might be. Spare time. When you're putting your priorities straight, you prioritize family and work and church and things of that nature ahead of watching this video. Now, how many people on YouTube or any other platform have told you something like that at the beginning of their video? I will, because I don't do this for a living, folks, and I'm not trying to make money off of this. This is not a business for me. It's a ministry. And I would prefer that you spend time with your family first, time with God first, time in doing what you're supposed to do in your job first. And in your spare time, watch the videos. So once again, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about what the real world is like, part 2. And we're going to define a term, and we're going to talk about what's going on with society and how can we understand it, what's going on in our personal lives, and how can we interpret those things. So thanks for watching. Sit back, relax, and hopefully enjoy the video. Thank you for joining us. Here we go with the music coming down. Now, in Proverbs chapter 17 and verse 6, it says this: "In those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes." And then in Judges 21:25, "In those days there was no king in Israel, and every man did that which was right in his own eyes." It's repeated. And then Proverbs, let's see, I had it earlier. Go over here and look. In Proverbs, it looks like let me take a look in here. It talks about not doing what you want to do in your own eyes. It says, here we are. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil." So you don't want to be wise in your own eyes. You want to fear God and depart from evil. Now, why is society falling apart? It's because of a little thing called paganism. And doing that which is right in your own eyes is paganism. That's what paganism is. It's being your own boss and doing your own thing, throwing away all of the moral boundaries, throwing away all of the ethical boundaries, and just doing whatever you want without consequences. That's paganism. And I'm not a pagan. And I don't want to live in a pagan society. And that's why I believe that morality should be considered in decisions that governments make. And so let's talk about the real world. What happens when you don't have moral boundaries set for society? What happens is what you're seeing in the inner cities in California now, where stores are being looted. Theft is sky high. Shoplifting has gone through the roof. And these stores are starting to, I'm talking about major corporations, Macy's, Sears, stores of that nature, and the mom and pop stores. They're shutting down and moving out of the inner city. They're shutting down and moving out of the inner city. What do you think is going to happen to the inner city when that occurs? And it's already occurring. Well, it becomes not only a ghost town, but it becomes a new ghetto. A place where crime begins to become rampant. But they don't have any stores to loot from anymore. They have to travel out a distance to find a store to go in and try to loot. And the looting, of course, which I spoke about in my last video, some of this looting is based upon a mentality that the people who are doing the looting are owed reparations. And this is their way of getting the reparations without permission from anyone to do so. They believe that they have a perfect right to go in and take whatever they want because they're oppressed because of what their ancestors went through. And so being caught and brought to court and held accountable for your actions, well, that would be just pure racism. That's just more oppression in their thinking. And so people get elected that think that way. And when these people go into office, they begin to pass laws that restrict the police from enforcing any laws of looting, any laws of petty theft, any laws of shoplifting. No, you don't enforce those, especially if the people doing it are a certain color. No regard at all for the store owner, because the store owner, because they're able to own a store, are the oppressors. And the people who are doing the looting of the store, they're the oppressed. This is the real world that we're living in right now. But there's another part of that real world that people are not seeing. And that is that consequences will come regardless if they come through laws and the prosecution of people who violate those laws or not. The consequences will still come. You have two roads of consequences. One road is where you enforce the law, you make the people who violate the law accountable for their actions, and then you have a sentencing. You have some kind of corrective action that occurs to prevent these people from violating these laws again, or at least to hopefully try to prevent that from happening. And sometimes it results in punishment, like going to prison, so forth, so on, fines, probation, parole, those things. Parole is after you get out of prison, but the point is they're held accountable. That's one road. The other road is the people who do these things are not held accountable. These laws are not enforced, or these laws are rescinded. They're taken away. And you say, well, how would these people be held accountable then? they're held accountable because the law of God brings about consequences. And what happens is these people who do this, they create their own hell that they have to live in themselves. Have you gone and looked at ghettos in the inner city? The barrio. Okay? Who wants to go into a crime-ridden area like South Chicago, for example, or South Central LA, and build a business and provide jobs? Nobody that's in their right mind would want to do that. And so the people who are committing these acts against the store owners, against these stores, they suffer accountability in the form of creating their own little community hell. Their own little community nightmare. Because the community drives the production that would would have the standard of living for the community to come up, and would provide a better standard of living for the community. That production leaves. Crime goes up. The means of making money at that point is no longer legitimate jobs and productive businesses. It's selling drugs, committing crimes, stealing from your neighbor. All of this stuff starts to go up so people can survive. We're in the season now where crime goes up because people want to put something under the Christmas tree for Christmas. And so they're willing to steal, rob, and harm their neighbor in certain parts of the country, in these inner cities and so forth, where this kind of crime occurs, in order to do that. And there is a sense of justification. They have a sense of, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm absolutely right to do this. I can do this if I want. That is paganism. And so it's paganism that is destroying the inner city in our country. So this whole thing begins to implode. And it creates a hellhole of high crime, of murder, rape, armed robbery. All of these things begin to occur on a massive scale. And so that's the consequence of not holding people accountable for their actions. Their actions will eventually create a nightmare scenario that people have to live in. And it's a horrible, horrible condition for people to live in. Because paganism always brings a society down. It always implodes. And it always, when it implodes, it always creates a horrible, horrible situation for people to live in. A nightmarish living condition. And we saw this in which country was in the South America? I want to say it was Venezuela. Venezuela. When that concept came in, that whole country just imploded. The entire economy of that country just fell. Now I understand it's Venezuela that elected a president that's going to reverse all of that now. But the point is, in the real world, not Hollywood, not fantasy world, not what your professor told you in that college course that you took. No, we're talking about the real world, not the fake world of the university, not the fantasy world of the university. Many professors are living in a fantasy world, not all, There are some good professors out there that understand the real world, but there's a whole bunch of them that live in a fantasy land, and they don't understand the real world. And so in the real world, you either hold the people accountable for their actions, or you go down the road to hell. It's one or the other. What else happens when society begins to break down because everyone is doing that which is right in their own eyes? Well, you have crime going up, you have the problem with the drugs and all of that. But you also have corruption that occurs in government. Government really begins to break down. Bribery becomes prominent in government. Bribery or making threats against government officials, or power plays to get government elected officials to do what you want them to do. And this is like big corporations doing this. These are foreign governments doing this. These are lobbyists that come in and apply pressure. This form of corruption floods in the government, and it utterly corrupts it. And what are we doing today, or dealing with today? We're dealing with a mass amount of corruption in government. Why? Because we've opted for paganism rather than moral standards and boundaries in society. We've opted with paganism. And paganism rots and corrodes and corrupts government, and government begins to function not efficiently, but in a form of insanity. Its functionality is utterly destroyed. Now, if you have a car and you buy this new car, and with the car comes an owner's manual, and there are manufacturers' recommended steps of maintenance on the car, how often an oil change should be done, what kind of oil should be put into the car, how often, when should the brakes be replaced, the brake pads, things of this nature. You have certain things that have to be done for a car for it to continue to function properly. But what does the pagan do? The pagan says, who are these people telling me what I am to do with my own car? I bought that car. I will do what the heck I want with that car. No boundaries for me on oil changes. Are you kidding me? You're going to tell me I have to come in every 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles and do an oil change? Who the heck do you think you are? I ain't doing no doggone oil change just because you told me I needed to do one. I'm going to defy you and not do any. I'll drive that car and maintenance that car any way I want to. And then everybody's passing them up as they're sitting on the side of the road because they blew their engine, because they never did an oil change and their engine blew. And who's to blame? Well, you know who the modern pagan blames? They blame the manufacturer. This car's no good. You guys sold me this car and the engine blew. It's no good. You guys... See? And who do they blame? Who do the modern pagans, who do they blame when society blows an engine? Because we didn't bother to look at the manufacturer's recommendations out of the divine revelation that the Creator gave us. And the whole thing blows up. Our marriages blow up. Our families blow up. Our society just falls apart. Who are you to tell me that I need to follow, do certain things in order to keep society strong? Who are you, God, to tell me Because you're the God's the manufacturer, He's the creator. Who are you to tell me that I need to do this or I need to do that to secure my marriage and to keep society strong? I'll do whatever I want to do. I'll do whatever is right in my own eyes. And then one day society's sitting on the side of the road with a blown engine. Boom! And we have chaos. And everything's falling apart. And guess what? That's where we are today, folks. Our country is sitting on the side of the road with a blown engine. Well, what happens when you get a blown engine? Well, if you decide you want to keep the car, you're going to have to either rebuild that engine, if it's possible, or swap it out for another engine. That's the real world. Not Hollywood, not woke Disney, not woke anything. That's the real world. Our society has broken down. So what the question is, now that we've blown the engine of society because we didn't want to do the oil changes that were needed, I'll just let them have the drag queen shows. Let the kids go attend them. Who am I to set a boundary there, a moral standard there as an elected official? I can't do that. So just let them go brainwash our kids and mind manipulate our kids and teach them that black is white. Right? Because nobody stood up and said, you know, that's paganism and that will destroy our kids. Nobody was willing to stand up and say that, were they? So, since we didn't want to do that, since we didn't want to stand up and do the right thing, we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with this society car that's sitting on the side of the road with a blown engine. What are we going to do with this society that has fallen apart? Are we going to rebuild the engine? We're going to try to rebuild the old Constitution, right? Try to get back to the old Constitution and get all that junk out of the engine and put new parts in and get it functioning again? Or do we scrap that one and rebuild a new one? We're going to come to a point where we're going to have to make a decision. And if we don't want to make a decision on that, we're going to live in a hellhole. And so, that, folks, is how the real world works. I'll see you next time on the C-Files. God bless. We'll see you next time, guys.